Bastards, hope you have a fantastic Thursday. Welcome back to the DeFranco Show. And a quick note before we get started. Next week, with it being Thanksgiving, I'm taking the whole week off. I'm using it as an opportunity to just see my dad, my family. I haven't seen them in a while. Really just too long for my liking. Although, on Wednesday, I should have an update video of some sort. Also, on the podcast channel next week, we have a podcast, a conversation with MKBHD. So look forward to that. But with that said, buckle up. Hit that like button and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today is news around Jussie Smollett, or as Dave Chappelle calls him, Jussie Smollett. And Jussie, if you don't know, former Empire actor, he made headlines back in January when he said two masked men looped a noose around his neck, poured bleach on him, and yelled homophobic and racist slurs. But after an investigation, Chicago police determined that the attack was staged by Jussie, who was then indicted on 16 felony counts of filing a false report. Now, Smollett has maintained his innocence. Prosecutors also eventually dropped the charges against him back in March. This, though, notably after he agreed to complete community service and forfeit the $10,000 bond he paid following his arrest. But main point, the reason that we're talking about this today is that Jussie Smollett is now countersuing the city of Chicago. And specifically what I'm talking about is that Smollett's lawyers filed a 2-count counterclaim against Chicago on Tuesday in response to their April lawsuit because Chicago was suing him, where the city of Chicago is demanding that Smollett pay over $130,000 to cover the 1,836 hours of overtime that was paid to police officers who were working his case. The city's lawsuit also saying they intended to seek attorney's fees and a civil penalty of $1,000 for each of his false claims. However, Smollett's legal team says the city is not entitled to any of this, arguing in part that the city shouldn't be allowed to hold him liable because of that plea deal, right? Because the city accepted $10,000 from the actor as, quote, payment in full connection with the dismissal of the charges against him, with the counterclaim adding that the city cannot seek additional recovery from Mr. Smollett under the doctrine of accord and satisfaction. His attorneys also went even further, accusing the city of malicious prosecution, saying that Smollett suffered humiliation, mental anguish, and extreme emotional distress as a result of the city's actions against him, with the claim also specifically calling out Chicago Police Department Superintendent Eddie Johnson and 2 other detectives, Edward Wadnicki and Michael Thies. And the counterclaim saying the police released false and misleading information which led media outlets to report that Smollett might have arranged the alleged attack. Now, in response to this countersuit, we saw Chicago Police issue a statement saying the city stands by its original complaint and will continue to pursue this litigation, with the city adding the judge in this case has already ruled in our favor once and we fully expect to be successful in defeating these counterclaims. Also, another thing that I wanted to point out, it's kind of interesting timing. On the same day as Jussie Smollett's counterclaim, you had Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx officially announced that she was running for re-election. She has 4 challengers fighting for her spot, and she has the whole outrage over the Jussie Smollett case hanging over her head. And the reason for that, if you don't remember, Foxx recused herself from the case before Smollett's arrest, saying that she did so because she had conversations about the investigation with one of Smollett's relatives. But a few months later, her office actually released documents citing a different reason, showing that she was advised to withdraw based on unfounded rumors that she was actually related to Smollett. Though she disagreed with the advice and called the rumors racist, she complied with the recommendation. Foxx's office also faced intense scrutiny for abruptly dropping the charges against Smollett. That was just something that left both police officials and community leaders confused and frustrated. At the time, Chicago Police Department Commander Ed Wadnicki called the reversal of charges a punch in the gut and said prosecutors did not discuss their decision with the police department prior to announcing it. You had then Mayor Rahm Emanuel and Superintendent Johnson speaking out against the decision.
This is without a doubt a whitewash of justice and sends a clear message that if you're in a position of influence and power, you'll get treated one way, other people will be treated another way. And
as far as Foxx, she actually even addressed this situation in a campaign ad, admitting to mishandling the Smollett case, but arguing that her opponents are attacking her personally over it to undercut progress.
Truth is, I didn't handle it well. I own that. I'm making changes in my office to make sure we do better. That's what reform is about.
And once again, one of the reasons that the timing is really interesting is with Smollett having this counterclaim, with it getting press. It all brings back Kim Foxx's office, recusal or not, their decision being used as Smollett's defense. Yeah, that's where we are with this one, and of course, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. And then, in quick entertainment news, let's talk about Brenda Song. And this is a story that's been picking up more and more steam. It's coming from an interview with Teen Vogue that was posted yesterday. There we saw Brenda Song saying that she wasn't picked to read for Crazy Rich Asians because she was told she was not Asian enough. Right, and so in that interview, you had Song saying their reasoning behind that. What they said was that my image was basically not Asian enough in not so many words. It broke my heart. I said, this character is in her late to mid-20s and Asian American, and I can't even audition for it? I've auditioned for Caucasian roles my entire career, but this specific role, you're not gonna let me do it? You're going to fault me for having worked my whole life? I was like, where do I fit? And then adding, I got myself together and said, Brenda, there is only one you, and you can't change who you are. You can't change your past. I am so grateful for every job that I've done. All I can do is continue to put good auditions out there, do the best that I can. That's all I can ask for. And obviously there were a number of reactions following that, but one of the most notable was we ended up seeing later from Crazy Rich Asians director John M. Chu, who tweeted, "Would these words ever come out of my mouth? Nope, makes no sense. I feel horrible she thinks this is the reason. The fact is, I love Brenda's song and am a fan. I didn't need her to audition because I already knew who she was." And also later tweeting about the casting of the film, saying, "One of my favorite memories of making Crazy Rich Asians was when we opened the auditions to anyone in the world with our open call. We watched hundreds and hundreds of videos from very talented people from all over the world. Made us tear up many times." But still, following this, you had a number of people responding that songs should have still been offered apart, some just confused in general. Right, people kind of questioning, you said you know who she was, you love her, but also because you knew her, that's why you didn't offer her a role. I don't know. I guess with this story, I love to know. What do you think? But from that, I want to share some stuff I love today, and Today in Awesome, brought to you by Ridge.com/DeFranco. And the Ridge, if you don't know, is the fantastic minimal front pocket wallet that's slim, RFID blocking, and lifetime guaranteed. It comes in titanium, carbon fiber, aluminum, polycarbonate, and on top of all of that, there are tons of different styles and colors to choose from, making it perfect for you or the perfect gift for anyone in your life. And its awesome sleek design is really what I love most, right? It has these two metal plates bound together by a durable elastic band, so it's easy to get in what you want, get out what you want. Also on top of that, if you need more goodness, they have phone cases, durable charging cables, power banks, knives, and even weatherproof backpacks, duffel bags, and travel kits. And with over 30,000 5-star reviews and free returns, Ridge has got you covered, whether you're upgrading your own gear or getting the perfect gift for someone else. So head on over to Ridge.com/DeFranco and make sure you use code DeFranco15 to get 15% off with a special Black Friday deal with worldwide free shipping today. And the first bit of awesome is if after today's show you're looking for more to watch, I put some more good out there for you. One, if you're looking for more news, we just uploaded a brand new deep dive on gerrymandering over at youtube.com/RogueRocket. Be sure to check it out and subscribe. And or two, if you haven't already checked out the brand new podcast with Simply Nailogical, I highly recommend it. It's probably one of our best received podcasts. And you can watch that over at youtube.com/aconvowith. Then we got an actors on actors conversation with Constance and Mindy Kaling. We had Lil Nas X going undercover on Reddit, Twitter, and Instagram. We had Chadwick, Boseman, and Sienna Miller teaching you South Carolina and British slang. We got Chance the Rapper on Hot Ones. Then the Smithsonian Channel gave us these grizzly cubs don't know what to do with their food. And Architectural Digest gave us a look inside a $35 million Hollywood mansion with a 2-level glass-bottomed pool. And if you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, really anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. And then let's talk about what is going on at Syracuse University in New York, which sort of came to a boiling point last night. I'm going to try and break it down. So over the last few weeks, there have been a number of racist incidents occurring on campus. According to the Daily Orange, a campus newspaper, racial slurs have been written in buildings at the school. In one case, reportedly, lights were pulled out of the ceiling in bathrooms, put into the toilet with the N-word being written on the light mirror and garbage can. There's been racist graffiti using slurs against Asian people and a swastika found near an apartment building students live in. You also had a freshman reporting that racial slurs had been yelled at him. And you also had the Department of Public Safety saying that they were investigating an incident that had recently occurred where a black woman said she had been verbally harassed and called the N-word. This then resulted in the suspension of a fraternity because reportedly members were involved in this incident. And actually, on that note, all fraternity social activities on campus have been suspended. The 4 students responsible have also been suspended. This then continued into Monday when reportedly a white supremacist manifesto was airdropped to students at or near the library, with reports saying that it was actually the 74-page manifesto written by the suspect in the shootings in Christchurch, New Zealand, where 51 people were killed. Though here, investigations have led officials to believe that this airdrop incident was a hoax. But still, you have students reportedly scared after this to walk alone, go to campus, or even just be on campus. But also, in response to this, we've seen a lot happening both on and off Syracuse's campus. You had government leaders chiming in. You had presidential candidate Joe Biden, who actually went to law school at Syracuse, saying, "We are truly in a battle for the soul of this nation, and it requires all of us to stand up together as a country against racism and bigotry. We must give hate no safe harbor." We also saw New York Governor Andrew Cuomo releasing a statement saying the hateful activities at Syracuse University are most disturbing not only to the Syracuse University community, but to the greater community of New York. And notably here, he also added that he did not believe that the school's chancellor, Kent Syverud, had handled the matter, quote, in a way that instills confidence, and adding, "I believe the Board of Trustees of Syracuse University should immediately bring in an experienced monitor with the relevant expertise to effectively investigate these incidents, clearly communicate the facts with the board and to the State Police Hate Crimes Task Force, and recommend a decisive strategy to address both these specific incidents and behavior." With him also saying that he is directing the task force, who had already been assigned to investigate the incidents, to look into the manifesto as well. And regarding this, he's also not the only one condemning the chancellor. You have a number of students upset with him, saying they think he hasn't done enough to address the recurring racism at Syracuse. Many responding to these these incidents in protests and sit-ins. These protests have been peaceful, though one arrest was made as one student made graffiti in support of the movement. As far as the protests, we've seen student group Not Again SU occupy a campus landmark for a week. This group has also been specifically leading the fight against these incidents, also taking charge and making sure the school takes action, with their mission statement reading, Not Again SU, a black student-led movement believes transparency from the administration is necessary. The safety of students on this campus, specifically the safety of underrepresented and underserved students, is paramount. They also have a list of 19 demands, which include expelling the students involved with hate crimes and related incidents, diversity training for faculty and staff, hiring more counselors that better reflect the growing identities of the student body, allocating $1 million to the creation of a curriculum that educates the campus on diversity issues, specifically anti-racism, a 48-hour response to racially motivated incidents for the school to not punish students who are participating in sit-ins, and to receive monthly updates on the demands. And we've seen a lot of support for this movement online. Good presidential candidate Kamala Harris showing support, the College Democrats of New York also releasing statement, as well as the school's high-profile basketball team also backing them on Twitter. We also saw Not Enough SU yesterday calling for the resignation of the chancellor along with other school officials. Right, and all of that led to a forum at a campus chapel last night, where students asked the chancellor would he agree to the demands. And according to the Daily Orange, he responded by saying, if the question is, can I produce agreement to every word at this instant? The answer is, I cannot. And according to their report, after he said this, hundreds of protesters then rose out of the pews, having had enough of what was going on. They then walked out chanting sign or resign. They then made their way to protest outside of the chancellor's house. And as of this morning, it appears that these protests were effective, because what we ended up seeing is that the chancellor released a statement saying, I signed the recommendations presented by international students and the students peacefully protesting. Of the 19 recommendations made by student protesters, I have agreed to 16 as written, and adding, I have suggested minor revisions to the other 3 for them to consider. As far as whether or not the students have agreed to the changes, Not Again SU shared a photo of his signature as well as the changes he made, with many congratulating them on enacting change on campus. But yeah, ultimately that's the story as it is now. It'll be interesting to see, how this develops, what other information comes out. Yeah, and of course with this one, I would love to know your thoughts on it. And then let's talk about this just massive news coming out of Israel. We've touched on this story before with the back-to-back elections that we've seen. We've just kind of been waiting for an update. Today we saw Israel's Attorney General announce that he was indicting Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu on bribery, fraud, and a breach of trust as part of a long-running corruption case. If you want a super detailed version regarding the charges, the background, I'll link to our previous coverage. We even did a deep dive. But for some quick context, Israel's Attorney General announced back in February that he intended to indict Netanyahu on those 3 charges, which stem from 3 different cases. One of which claims Netanyahu illegally accepted $264,000 worth of gifts from tycoons in exchange for lobbying, and 2 other cases alleging that he traded favors for positive news coverage from an Israeli newspaper and website. Now, Netanyahu denied those allegations, calling them fake news and saying that those claims that were against him were part of a politically motivated witch hunt by the left and the media. Right, and this formal indictment is massive for 2 reasons. First off, it is a first. It is the first time in Israel's history that a sitting prime minister has been indicted. And secondly, it throws Israel's political system, which really even the nicest way to describe it right now would be a shit show, into even more chaos. Or if you didn't see our previous coverage, Israel's entire political system has basically been up in the air since the first election this year back in April. And then what? The last time we talked about the situation was right after Israel held their second election in just 5 months. And it's been really interesting to see how Netanyahu has kind of failed these both times. Because really, if you look at the situation, he's gotten so close both times, but it just, the pieces won't fit together. Right, and to explain, right, in the first election, Netanyahu's Likud party and opposition leader Benny Gantz's Blue and White party each won 35 seats in Israel's 120-seat parliament, right? Which meant that neither party won an outright majority of 61 seats, which meant that they had to build coalitions with smaller parties until they got to that sweet 61. Following the election, even though it was a tie, Israel's president gave Netanyahu the first shot at forming the government because he was seen as the most likely to create a majority. This because a group of right-wing parties that were expected to back him had won a larger block of seats. But Netanyahu ended up failing to form a coalition in the 42-day deadline that he was given. And while today we're talking about first, this was notably the first time in Israel's history that a prime minister-elect was unable to form a government after an election. And as far as why Netanyahu failed here, I'll explain it in a second because he essentially failed the second time for a similar reason. The main point, first election, it's a failure, and instead of giving Gantz or someone else a chance to form a government, Bibi pushes through a bill that dissolves parliament and triggers a second election in September. And in those September elections, we see slightly different numbers, with Gantz's Blue and White party getting 33 seats to Netanyahu's 32. Now, despite the fact that Netanyahu got fewer seats and he already failed to form a government just a few months prior, Israel's president still gave him the first shot at making a government again. But one thing was different this time around. Instead of trying to build a coalition of smaller parties, Netanyahu tried to form what's known as a unity government. And under a unity government, what would happen would be the Likud and the Blue and White Party would come up with an agreement to share power and then pool their seats to make a majority. And if you're thinking, that doesn't really make sense, I find it very unlikely that two rival parties would come together. You are not wrong. Right? Because even though pretty much everyone, including Netanyahu and Gantz, believe a unity government was the only way to form a majority, there was one huge sticking point. Gantz said that he would not form a unity government with Netanyahu as the leader of the Likud as long as Bibi faced indictment. But, unsurprisingly, Netanyahu refused to step down. And I say unsurprisingly because if he stayed on as prime minister, he could pass a deal giving himself immunity against any indictments. And that's a big part of the reason that this has dragged on for so long. But yeah, really for Netanyahu, this was his last shot and everything was on the line. Right, and so what we end up seeing is Netanyahu on October 21st announcing that he once again failed to form a government. So then at this point, Israel's president handed the task over to Gantz, who was then given 28 days to try to just cobble up together a government. And just yesterday, hours before his deadline, Gantz announced that he too had failed to build a government. Now, as to why Gantz was unable to make a government, both Gantz and Netanyahu blame one another. Speaking yesterday, Gantz slammed Bibi for his insistence that he maintain his right-wing, ultra-religious bloc rather than trying to create a unity government, and saying, "I will not cooperate with an effort to turn the majority of people to a hostage being held by a small group of extremists. I will not be prepared to impose a radical agenda on the majority of the people who have chosen differently, and I will not accept the delegitimacy of any part of the Israeli public." Netanyahu, for his part, hit back again, saying that he had been, quote, willing without preconditions to enter immediate discussions with you even tonight to form a unity government, saying that it was Gantz's failure, also accusing him of being willing to work with Arab lawmakers who Bibi called terror supporters. But then finally there's also this third player that has just been absolutely key in everything that's been going on in the repeated failures to form a government. And the person we're talking about is Avigdor Lieberman, the leader of the secular ultra-nationalist Israel Our Home party. Lieberman was once a Netanyahu ally and even served on Bibi's cabinet in multiple positions, but he last year denounced Netanyahu, citing the prime minister's growing dependence on ultra-Orthodox parties. And like we talked about in the past, Lieberman's decision not to form a coalition with Netanyahu after the first election was ultimately the reason why Netanyahu was unable to form a majority. He's essentially throughout this situation had the ability to be a kingmaker, right? And the reason for that is he was basically the only chance for either of these two to form a unity government, right? Essentially, if Netanyahu had the support of the religious parties, Lieberman's seats could give him a majority. And then on the other side, if Gantz had the support of more left-wing parties as well as the Arab party, Lieberman's seats would give him a majority. But Lieberman has refused to work with both the ultra-Orthodox religious parties and the Arab list, right? And so with this story, of course, there's a question of, okay, well, what now? And the answer is a very, very clear right, this entire situation puts Israel in totally uncharted waters. Right, you have 2 elections, 3 failures to form the government, indictments against Netanyahu. It is just an absolute mess. So we kind of have to focus on, well, what do we know? Well, we know that Israel's parliament has 21 days to get a majority to support Gantz, Netanyahu, or some third candidate. And if parliament can't put together a majority in the next 3 weeks, then Israel will automatically be put into their 3rd election in less than a year. That would most likely happen in March of next year, and right now, many experts are saying that's the likely scenario. That said, there's also the question of, well, what does this mean for Netanyahu? Well, it's being argued by some that he legally isn't required to step down. That's only because a prime minister has never been indicted before. And so even though Israel has a law that requires indicted ministers to resign, whether that law applies to a prime minister hasn't been tested. Though there, we're already seeing reports that several lawmakers have said that they're going to petition the Supreme Court to remove him from office. But Bibi, for his part, has made it clear he does not intend to step down. Speaking after the indictments were announced, he told Israelis that they were witnessing an attempted coup and called on them to investigate the investigators, and going on to say, "I will not allow lies to prevail. I will continue to lead this country." But even if he doesn't step down, some experts believe that the indictment could make it far more difficult for him to retain power. Though it is important here to point out that Netanyahu has largely kept his popularity with his base during these last 2 elections, even with the charges against him. But polls have also shown that an official indictment would change the minds of many, including right-wing voters. Though I think it's important to note that how someone thinks they would react to something is different than how they might actually react in the moment. Also, let's say we go to a 3rd election, Netanyahu does win, he still faces a new legal problem. It would be the first time he was a candidate under indictment, which raises questions about whether or not the president would even give him a shot at forming a government. And on top of all that, there were already reports that some in his own Likud party were wanting to change leadership after Gantz failed to form a government. And already today we're seeing reports that a lawmaker in the Likud party has called for a primary contest for prime minister within the party and said he would be a contender. So now there's a possibility that maybe more members are on board. But ultimately, right now, we kind of just have to wait and see. The situation there likely is not going to be any less of a shit show anytime soon, but we'll definitely keep our eyes open and see kind of which way it ends up going. That said, in general, of course, I always love to know everyone's thoughts. If you live there, or in the area, or you have family there or in the area, I would definitely love to know your thoughts on what's happening right now. And that is where I'm gonna end today's show. And hey, if you liked it, let me know. Hit that like button. Also, if you're new here, you want more of these daily dives into the news, hit that subscribe button. Definitely tap that bell to turn on notifications. Also, if you're not 100% filled in, you're looking for more to watch, you should definitely check out that brand new podcast with Simply Nailogical, or maybe just missed yesterday's Philip DeFranco show, you want to catch up, you can click or tap right there to watch either of those. But with that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you next time.